Tony Nolan speaks to over 800,000 people a year at over 100 events.
And I was born in a mental institution, the son of a mentally insane homeless prostitute. And she had to abandon me at birth, and she was institutionalized. I was given over to a kind of a real sketchy foster care system in Florida in the United States. And suffered unimaginable abuse under the hands of some sick, twisted, really predators. And they beat me, they sexually molested me. They tortured me with burning cigarettes. It's repulsive to think about.
You were adopted at 3.
Yeah.
Is it really that they paid $200?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting story how that all happened, but I was adopted for $200. And then grew up and grateful that Bob and Dottie adopted me. Interesting story there. My mother that adopted me, her mother actually ran the prostitution home that my biological mother worked at.
This has got to be a movie.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a wild deal. And at 14 years old, she lied to this visiting man, told him she was 20, and they ran off and got married and couldn't have kids. But because of the culture of where she grew up, the ladies that would have babies, they would kind of put them over into these home foster units like I was in. And so she knew where she could get some babies, and she went and she turned around and got me. And I'm very, very grateful that they did. But we grew up in a very rough, impoverished neighborhood in Florida that actually was called Sin City. But it had nothing to do with the decadence of like Las Vegas, you know, Nevada. It was the antithesis. It was a complete, really bad ghetto filled with what would be kind of there in a very impoverished area, murder and a lot of stresses and horrific things. My cousin, he got killed. They shot him with a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun and blew his head off. It was horrible to see those things and witness those things.
The biggest wound was never hearing the words, "I love you."
Yeah, from my dad. That's
particularly from your dad.
Yeah. He turned to alcohol to cope with our poverty. A lot of people turn to different things to cope with their economic stresses. His was alcohol. And he'd get drunk a lot, and when he would, he'd get violent, and he would beat me. And
he actually said he regretted the $200.
More times than I care to remember. My dad doing that and screaming at me and just telling me that, you know, is this all $200 got me? And then he would punctuate it by saying, I wish I would have never bought you. And that crushed me. That was worse than any of the stuff going on in my neighborhood, because that crushed me.
You started to turn to the things that were right there, the
That's
drugs,
right. Yeah. I turned to those things. They were easily available. People were telling me that these things would anesthetize the hurt and the pain, and so I did. I started living a very self-sabotaging lifestyle of massive alcohol and narcotic abuse, but it really wasn't to party. It was to anesthetize the fear and the pain of the rejection. But I came to a haunting realization, and that was this, that the highs never get stronger than the hurts, ever. And that led to me wrestling with suicide, which ended up landing me in a mental institution myself. And those were horrifically dark days in my life.
You had trouble with the law. It just gets so dark. But February 24th, 1989, you love hearing that
Beautiful date.
February 24th, 1989
Yes.
was actually the morning after you tried to drink yourself to death.
That's right. And I'll never forget in that moment, it's fresh, it's really still fresh, that God screamed in my heart with a whisper. And he said, Tony, your adopted father told you that he wished he would have never bought you for $200. But Tony, I'm your heavenly father. And let me encourage you, I have never regretted purchasing you with the priceless blood of my son. And all I can tell you is that I got swallowed up by the love of God.
You've just been telling us about meeting your biological mother and your abuser.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about your father, by the way,
That's
the one who
right.
purchased you. This is another man.